As far as I've stepped into Exile at this point, I'm starting to see the through line of the story with this album, even apart necessarily from the lore's vision, which I haven't necessarily read into yet, this being a conceptual release and having its own individual story. I'm starting to see the through line from track to track to track within the vision of the artist as we sort of get to that crescendo point, at least on the standard release. I haven't looked as much into the deluxe side, but I'm seeing that tale being fleshed out as we approach the conclusion of Exiles, and thus far it has been a great album to cover. Maybe for some of you this is the first introduction to Exiles, as well as perhaps the Demon Hunter Attribution. I'm sure for some of you, you might know that name, you might recognize it immediately, but for those of you who are fresh listeners, they're very well known in the Christian metal scene. They've been a metal group that's been around for many years. Of course, they have got a wide secular audience of appeal as well because of the genre and the talent. They've been a longtime favorite of mine, though, in their 20 or 10 year, about 12 years of them, I've been a devoted fan. Speaking of devotion, I've absolutely come to love them. And I hope that at some point, if you are a fresh listener with this video, I can share that same elation I experienced with their music with you. Because Exile really has been a pleasure to cover in regards to their overall library. I've been absolutely enthralled by it. As well as, spotlighting good music on this channel just generally, which I tend to do on a pretty broad basis. I have a lot of artists that I consult over their emerging or established talents. This, of course, of Demon Hunter, very well-known name in my playlist. I've been an active fan for a long time. But just music in general, I love spotlighting on this channel. It's been a venture of mine over the last couple of years in regards to an ambition to bring it more into a principal role, and I've succeeded in that over the 2022 year. And as 2023 emerges, I'm quickly evolving that vision, even just in the planning stages. It's going to be a good year if you're into enjoying music experiences with me on a first listen. Again, I loved bringing it to the channel as best that I can, and Exiles has been an absolute treat, as well as spotlighting Demon Hunter, which I've always wanted to do. And with, first album in terms of devotion, which I don't tend to do entire album-length reactions that often because there's a lot of artists I want to consult, and because these are in part passion projects, I have to balance ambition with efficacy of publication and the work side of what I produce on this channel and keeping the channel going. So for me, it's a rarity. But it's an exception I apply in specific cases when I feel either, maybe there's a limited limited scale of tracks that we've heard thus far, maybe a single album's release. I can think of some past ones, maybe some EPs. There's not that many tracks to go off of. I'm like, I can make time for maybe 2 or 3 more tracks. Or perhaps in bands that I've, again, been longtime fans of. I'm like, they deserve it. Demon Hunter is one such of those exceptions. And again, Exile has been an absolute treat in its, I would say, deluxe form, which is the way to enjoy it. Although you can enjoy it from the standard release as well, I highly recommend, again, coming from a longtime fan, you get the deluxe edition. It's only $40, but it is worth your money. Not only to get the 2 bonus tracks, which if you're unfamiliar is sort of an evolving trend among their past releases, I would say going back on probably Extremis, to be honest with you, even though that's more available, but you have to get the deluxe edition in order to access those 2 bonus pieces, and their bonus work has really been great over the last couple of albums, and Exile, I'm sure, will be no exception to that, and I do recommend, like I said, that you get that form of the album, because it is the principal and primary way to enjoy it. With Devotion, of course, this is another one off the standard release, so anybody has access to this, even if you just listen to the standard album. I'm going to go ahead and cue up the song and begin a first introduction for ourselves. And if you're not familiar with the way I format my music reaction coverage, which is the part where I specify, I guess this is the connected point of where it's going, and maybe in past videos you can understand, where I'm going with this, because I've brought it up at least on 4 occasions today. I will, if you're not familiar, again, like I said, I will provide the lyrics for you. It's something I offer in all my music reactions, at least over the last couple of months. I've been retooling said content to be in a close to perfect state, at least to where I want it to be. I will have those lyrics provided for you in the song, and they'll process along with the piece as we proceed through it. And forgive me if I end up looking down at all. For me, I access the lyrics in my own hand because I have, and this is why I recommend the deluxe edition, not only for the tracks, but also for this guidebook, which this has been consistent as well with other past issues, let's say, for example, Outlive and War and Peace. If you want to get a mindset into the artist like me in regards to why they structured certain tracks and their writing in the lyrics a certain way, this book will be a very helpful aid to you. I'd love to get in the hearts of artists across the board and understand what their mindsets are to get a deeper appreciation for their song. And with Demon Hunter, In the past, I haven't had that access, but in the months and the money that I put forward to get those booklets, it has helped me to see the vision in a much clearer way, and I really appreciate that opportunity. Again, from my perspective, it's the highest recommendation I can give you to get or to acquire that booklet so you can appreciate it for yourself. And, I'm touching on points, especially in the full album coverage, now that I have access to this, which in part is the reason of why I waited so long to cover the album. I wanted to get this booklet processed in the mail, and I finally did. Although it took me about 2 months after that to get back on speed. There's a lot of artists that I consult, and that's not in any way to throw shade. There's just a lot of work that I have. So getting behind a Demon Hunter, that wasn't in any way attributed to them. It was just a factor of the circumstances, but it really is the highest recommendation I can provide for you to read along with the piece in terms of the booklets. That is the way to enjoy them. So take that for what you will, but that's coming from a longtime fan. So again, if I'm looking down at all, it's because I'm reading along with the lyrics and marrying that to the vision of the piece, which we will talk about as we analyze the track and get a better perspective on it with the song, which we're about to now, in terms of meshing both elements. And this is coming off of Godless, by the way. Good introduction. Going back to the hard and aggressive, I like that. It's been a real good mixture on this album. Different tones across the board. Key focused riff. I like that background siren. I can kind of hear it. It's subtle, but it's good. It's nice to get back in touch with the growl, by the way. I love that Ryan's voice. It's so dynamic. Okay. Swinging more into a melodic chorus. Okay. Interesting. A lot of dimension here. Good range. I like there's an overlapping between the screamo and the background siren. That's good. Good bassist too. I really like the foundation here. The mapping here is really interesting in regards to the construction of the verse on the music. There's a lot of variance points to it. We shift around quite a bit. And as a segue into the chorus, which, even in the melodic territory has that aggressive background to it. It's a good basis. It's a good construction, in my opinion. These sections really doing it for me, though. I love it. Okay. Substantial receding. I imagine we're going to get thrown back into that in a little bit. To tie in the song in terms of an effective conclusion. You knew it would be an epic jump back in if you're a long-time fan. You can't leave us kind of on this breath too long. That is so interesting. I like the alteration here. It's good. Good scope. This ending is really interesting how it's constructed. Fascinatingly effective. Great conclusion here. Effective. That is a very interesting piece. I mean, again, the variance points into that, even with, again, falling back on that more aggressive foundation of what Demon Hunters established for themselves since the beginning. I'm really struck by the integration in certain elements of that chorus's construction, or even not just the chorus, but the song's construction. I mean, again, the interlude is obviously very heavy. It teases that electronic. See how the beginning was again. I think it's more of an electronic warble, which is interesting. But then it goes immediately into this gut punch of a song, which is quite great in terms of the tonality of it. And the verse structures are very familiar to where Demon Hunter has gone, even though there's a lot of variance points in those pre-chorus structures. The choruses themselves, I really like, again, the background emphasis on the that rough edge, even though it has a more melodic presence. Ryan's vocals go more into the ballad territory. It's a good melding of elements, in my opinion. It's how far is it into the song? Around the 3-minute and 32-second mark where the song kicks back in. Now, I'm going to read the lyrics here. Now I know my way, don't look back, I will obey. Give me breath, give me a name, let me lead. Thy will be done here on earth until it's one in your just name. It's like a paraphrased Lord's Prayer in part, especially on the last section. That really struck me. I don't oftentimes see that integration. I have in certain cases, specifically in reference to like Christian music. Let's say, for example, some of you Christian fans might, of like rock music and metal music in that scene, might know this name, Disciple. I've been a fan of theirs for a while too. Long Live the Rebels. I guess I'm really dated in terms of when I came to that album. It was out in 2016. Well, I need to get back on my Disciple high. It used to be, I used to listen to them all the time when they were on the radio, but since I've kind of gravitated more into my playlist. What song was it? Well, it's actually, I think it's even just like every track and the way it was written, from the booklet's perspective, the way the songs were structured, it was amazing to me. I don't remember if any songs were explicitly paraphrasing Bible verses, but the background of what you read, the booklet referenced like on almost every line or a certain section of lines, a biblical verse. So like the songs were strategically structured to mirror passages within the Bible and motifs and expressions expressed there in Christian theology. I really found it amazing giving that album a listen. I'm like, I've just not seen that dimension that often. To directly integrate a paraphrased form in part, at least in the last 3 lines of, or up to the last line, the preceding 3, to interweave a paraphrased form of the Lord's Prayer is very interesting. Especially how that relates again to the vision of the song, specifically speaking about devotion. Although the song in itself, when I read the inspiration, again, get this booklet, is of huge access to you if you so choose to understand the mindset of the artist here. But where Ryan's speaking about devotion in life to a certain practice or a cause as a way to deter boredom. I guess he says it in some here. I like the way he says this. Don't let life live you. Devote yourself. So as a deterrence to boredom or losing out on time and not devoting yourself to a certain practice or cause that will achieve your visions and your ambitions or what plans God has for your life, in part. Again, it's open to interpretation how you personally see the devotion word, but I kind of see it again with the integration of the Lord's Prayer as a very explicit devotion to faith. I mean, that's obviously indicated in the song. I find that quite great. I've just never seen it done so well, in my opinion. And there may be bands that try that I'm not thinking of at the moment. Maybe some names escape me. I mean, I listen to a lot of music, so forgive me if I forget a track here or there, but That really struck me, just again, reading those lines, how well tied that is to the meaning of a song, and again, perhaps how narrow a vision it makes to a particular devotion, even when perhaps a band is speaking of it generally and everyone a little more broadly. And I love the way, again, that he states that whole devote yourself rather than letting life live you. I mean, I struggle with that daily. I mean, it's hard to sometimes balance work with passion in regard to time that, you're allowed on earth in terms of your life. I'm really struck by that piece, especially in regards to the lyrics. I mean, again, the song itself is closely connected to how they've established their identity and presence as a band, but it's this lyrical construction, especially on that last, at the 3 minute and 32 second mark, that it just really strikes me as dynamic and very individual. I don't see, when you're talking about Christian groups, or let's say more specifically Christian rock groups, I don't see that integration explicitly in the music. While perhaps it is a creative inspiration, and you could say maybe Disciple is close in the way at least they structured their pieces. I mean, again, reading that booklet, it was which anybody can. It wasn't like a deluxe edition or anything. It was right in the song. Like if you were to buy the album for yourself, you could pick it up for yourself and see what I'm communicating as well and focus. But inspiration, I mean, that's one thing. I thought it was cool how they did it there. But to see like a flat out inscription of biblical verses here tied in, paraphrased a bit, it amazes me how well that worked and effectively tied to the song it is. Demon Hunter's never short of surprises, are they? I mean, especially like for somebody like me, who's again 12-year fan. I still have to say that this album, in part, has a very fresh energy to it that I just have not heard yet. I really haven't. I'm very impressed by it. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below as well, perhaps for those of you who are comparable to me, longtime Demon Hunter fans. What are your overall thoughts on the entry itself? I mean, again, like I said, Exile has been a very dynamic album generally, but Devotion is a very interesting work. I mean, again, it skirts on that familiar energy from what we've long come to love of Demon Hunter, and yet it's really surprising. And it's still, like, every track I've heard thus far has something fresh and unique about it, even if perhaps it's just limited to the song's vision or the tone of the music, some different attempts that the bands are at trying new things. I'm really happy with what I'm hearing. I'd love to hear if perhaps it's a shared emotion among longtime fan listeners, and maybe for some of you this is a first introduction. That's a very dynamic piece on Exiles. I'd recommend listening to the album in its entirety, as well as perhaps, if you haven't introduced yourself yet, and this is very much a fresh introduction, their past library. You will thank me. I'm very impressed. I mean, again, that every track thus far from what I've heard has certainly satisfied me in some unique way. And I've just never seen Christian lyrics brought in so specifically in terms of biblical passages, or at least paraphrased versions of it, tied in so well to the mindset of the song, especially in the metal rock sphere. Like, that's what I'm thinking of more specifically here. And forgive me again if I'm forgetting maybe a couple tunes I've heard in the past that I'm forgetting about right now. But it just struck me. I mean, again, I think that's a particular characteristic of what makes this song so unique. Even though, again, like I said, the music was great, and I thought the siren backgrounds, even to touch on that point, were also a fantastic integration. It's a very satisfactory song that just continues to impress me on the quality of Exiles as the general album. And I'm sure the ever 3 remaining tracks in the Deluxe Edition will speak to that. Those being, well, next up is Along the Way, and we'll get to that in a separate video, but Devotion is, like every track thus far, a thrilling experience and a highly satisfying one. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.